Everyone knows that consultants travel all over the place to go and be with their clients, but not everyone knows, at least not before they start a consulting job, that despite the fact that you'll travel to be wherever your project is based, not everyone will actually be there when you get there. So why travel there at all? Well, good question. Sort of. Let me explain. I'm going to explain where everyone on a project team might be based and why. And I'm going to give you lots of examples using projects that I was on to give context to where everyone was all the time and why they were where they were. If you're considering consulting as a career, this should help you get a sense of the reality of the day-to-day work. And if you're already working in consulting, this should clear up any remaining questions that you have about why it is that people are or are not where you are. Welcome back, by the way. I'm Charlie, a consulting senior manager and remote business owner, and my Consultant Explorer channel is to help you be so successful in your early years in management consulting that you're set up for total freedom to do whatever you want to in life. So first things first, if you're working in or going to work in consulting, then you're going to have to get used to a constant sense of everyone being all over the place all the time. In other jobs, you have an office and your colleagues work in that office too, and you'll have your own desks and you know who you'll see and where you'll sit every day. In consulting, it's the opposite. Even in your own company's office, the one you were technically hired into, you won't have a desk. You sometimes might not even be able to get a desk, and you certainly won't know exactly who will be in on any one day that you go in, except for obviously any people you've agreed specifically to go in and meet. And that scenario of general uncertainty is created because everyone is going out to work in the locations that are required by their projects on the days that are required. But, you say, I said earlier that not everyone goes to the project location, because even if you go, you won't see everyone there. Very good. Extra points for actually listening. So if not everyone goes to the project location, why aren't they in the consulting firm's home office? Okay, let's clear something up first. There are different reasons that people might be or not be in a project's location, and those different reasons apply to different types of consulting resources. That's what consultancy call their employees, by the way, resources. I'm going to talk through those reasons, and then I'll come back to the fact that people aren't always in that consulting firm's home office. So let's imagine you've travelled to your project's base location to be with the project team. That base location is a client office in central London, let's say. It might be your first day on that project, or it might be your 101st day on that project. It doesn't matter. When you get there, lots of your fellow consulting colleagues who are on the project team with you aren't there. Here's where they are and why. Some are in other client office locations. Someone senior is meeting a senior client in the different office that client is based at, north of London. It wouldn't be very considerate to ask that senior client to take time out of their day to travel to somewhere convenient for the senior consultant, like the central London office, so that senior consultant makes the trip instead. Also, a sub-team of consultants of all seniority levels on the project are running a workshop in yet another client office, because that's where the key stakeholders for that workshop are based. That office is about 3 hours west of London. The workshop can't be run without the knowledge of those client stakeholders, so again, those consultants make the trip to be in the right office with them. It's actually very often the case that client stakeholders that are important to a project aren't based in the location that the project is based in. Usually because projects are running C-level initiatives that have an impact on multiple parts of a client organisation. And a client organisation is often split by department into different logical locations, meaning client stakeholders are all over the place, whilst the project is based in just that one location. Other colleagues are in an external hired event space. None of the client or consulting meeting rooms with the right presentation equipment were available for the presentation that these mid-level consultants are giving to their client stakeholders today. So the consultants have temporarily hired an external space close to where the client attendees are usually based. This isn't the sort of thing that happens super regularly, but I would say it happens at least once a project, if not more. One other colleague has sought permission to work from home today. This consulting colleague on your team has personal reasons to need to work from home, and it has to do with a medical appointment that they need to be able to get to, which is close to their home and far from the project-based location. There are many other reasons people might take a working from home day, and to be honest, it's becoming more and more common, especially given that project team members are so spread out anyway. Things like deliveries or family responsibilities or laptop checkups all might be reasons to work from home too. Now, All of those people might usually be based in the project-based location, but it just so happens that today they're elsewhere. So you probably will work alongside these people relatively regularly in person, meaning you'll definitely meet them. But are there others who might never go to the project-based location, whom you will likely never meet? Yep. Here's where they are and why. Some of the consultants on your project team aren't full-time on your project. This is especially true of people whose expertise is required sometimes to upskill the full-time consultants on the team. Typically, people who have high demand expertise become very expensive. And this means that it's difficult for projects to cover their costs full-time while still remaining on target profit. It usually wouldn't make sense to have these people on the project full-time either, because their expertise is only really required at key crunch points or for key decisions. And expertise can be bred in a very different location to where your project is based. For example, it might be that lots of US clients have wanted to run projects that require skill X, but UK clients are only just starting to want to run those types of projects that require that skill. So people in the UK haven't developed that skill yet, but it's good practice to take regular advice from those in the US who have had the opportunity to become experts in it already. And you might have different experts for different things, all in different locations, all on your project, and all of which you speak to on a relatively regular basis. And unless there's a big workshop or milestone that justifies flying everyone in for an in-person event, you will never meet these people in person. Some whole sub-teams on your project are based full-time in entirely different countries. It's very common that development teams, i.e. the people who actually configure and customize software and write code, are based in offshore hubs. The word offshore generally applies to consulting employees who aren't client-facing in the same way as onshore employees. This makes sense for development teams who don't necessarily take their direction from clients and instead take direction from onshore consulting colleagues about what to build. The onshore, or client-facing, resources effectively do the translation job in the middle, understanding what the client needs and explaining that to the offshore teams, so that they can meet the need with software. And the same is true of test teams, who are typically offshore too. They test all the tech that the development teams build, and they don't need to be client-facing to do that. So that creates a situation where you've got whole sub-teams of your project working permanently in other locations, in other countries even, and yet you're working with them virtually every single day. There's one other type of team which is often based in alternative locations, and just to make things confusing, they're often called nearshore teams. These teams are built by consulting firms to be a group of people highly skilled in something that is, or will be, in high demand on projects. Each group becomes what's called a Centre of Excellence, or COE. I saw COEs for user experience design, or for design thinking, or for call centre handling. I also saw COEs for mid-complexity build of specific technologies. All of these types of teams can play a very important full-time role on your project, and yet they're based permanently in another country. And as the term nearshore suggests, they engage with clients on occasion virtually, but not full-time and in person like you do. And again, unless there's a specific reason to fly these people into the base project location, you'll likely never meet them in person. And one last reason people on your team might never go to your project-based location: they have approval from your firm to work permanently from elsewhere. I saw this happen only a handful of times, and the people I saw do this had worked at the firm for a good number of years and they had the right levels of credibility. So I'm pretty sure it's tough to get the approval for it. But there are some people who, for personal or family reasons, have to be based permanently somewhere else. Somewhere that isn't commutable to the consulting home office, and certainly not to all client offices. And given that not everyone on your project team is at your project-based location in your client office every day anyway, this becomes a pretty workable situation. You might just never meet them in person. So, as you can see, there are a lot of reasons why you might not see all of your teammates when you travel to your project-based location. And there are a number of reasons that you might never meet some teammates in person. Most projects do operate like this. So it's absolutely possible to work in a team that is both globally distributed and tight-knit. If anything, it encourages more and more regular communication and engagement with your teammates. So we still have two questions that we should wrap up. Firstly, where are the people who are based at your consulting home office when they're not at that home office? Well, now you know that so long as you're based at an onshore office, If they're not at that office today, they're either at their client site or they have reason to work from home. And the second question was, why should you even travel to your project-based location at a client's office at all if everyone won't be there? This is a really interesting question. And COVID tested it. There were lots of projects that continued absolutely fine with everyone working fully remotely. So perhaps all this consulting travel actually isn't required. But most of those projects had already used the opportunity for key onshore consultants to meet key client stakeholders in person and develop those in-person relationships. So transitioning those relationships to the online world during COVID lockdowns was relatively simple. If lockdown had continued much longer, however, and that whole new projects had started without any prior in-person relationship at all, I do wonder as to how effective these consultant client teams might have gelled. Offshore consulting teams are very used to developing purely online relationships with onshore consulting colleagues, but clients often aren't necessarily used to that at all. Do you think it could work? Let me know in the comments. And if you found this insightful, then tell me by liking the video. If you'd like to see what I post next, then definitely subscribe to my channel. Social media links are below if you'd like those. And if you have any questions or other comments, then feel free to use the comment section here and I'll do my best to answer absolutely everything. In the meantime, thank you so much for listening. I hope you have a great day and I wish you all the best with your exploring.